All right, kia ora tātou everybody, and welcome to our Monday, the 11th of May Committee of Council meeting, our audio-visual meeting around hearings. First of all, just would like to explain that the meeting is being recorded, obviously, for public purposes, and that'll be available on the council website. To the submitters that are here this morning, kia ora, a warm welcome to you. And those that have been into the council chamber will understand that it is a 10-minute timer for your submission. Please, your submissions take them as being read. They have been. And if you'd like to summarise or add anything new, and then just if you would like questions to be asked by councillors, just remember to leave a little bit of time there for that. We will give you an understanding that at 8 minutes, you've got a couple of minutes to go. So, councillors, just remind you, as per norm, questions in the chat bar, please, and I'll just go through our normal agenda of business. I haven't received any additional items. There are none. If you do have anything, please pop it into the chat box now. We haven't. Any declarations of interest? Again, I haven't received from anybody.
Yeah, sorry, Grant. Councillor Hancock, just in relation to the Palmerston North Community Services Council, I know one of the submitters. Thank you.
Great, thank you, councillor. And apologies received. I haven't received any apologies. So in attendance today, we've got Councillor Rutherford, Councillor Barrett, Councillor Meehan, Councillor Petrinas, myself as Mayor, Councillor Naylor, Councillor Finlay, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Hancock, Councillor Bowen, Councillor Dingwell, Councillor Beatty, Councillor Harpiter, and do we have the Deputy Mayor online?
Yes, you do, Mr. Mayor.
We've missed you. My apologies there. So look, I'll look
and
to
also
move...
Grant, Vaughan Dennison too.
Sorry, Councillor Dennison. And we have
Councillor Butt as well. You forgot me.
And Councillor Butt. So if I could just ask the administrator to make sure that they are all there. And we will now go through to our first hearing and submitter, and I'd like to invite Jean Hera from the Women's Health Collective to perhaps speak to her submission, and I can see you online. Welcome, Jean. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora koutou katoa. I'm Jean Hera. I'm Manager and Community Health Worker at Te Ha Oheni Ahuani Palmerston North Women's Health Collective. And I would like to quickly start with just expressing a bit of appreciation for the advocacy and support from our City Council, our Mayor and City Councillors over the last year. It's helped a lot as we strive to find enough funding for our important work, which is even more important now at this time of recession. And also thank you for the achievements for our community, for positive developments and working in partnership with Mana Whenua, for the contributions to the important work of community groups, and for assistance and support for our low-income citizens in particular. Our collective advocates for women, for those on low incomes, and part of this is to advocate for community groups and community development that serves the needs of our more vulnerable. The effects of the COVID-19 Rahui shutdown will unfold over time for community groups as funding availability declines as compared to the current focus on businesses and immediate effects. It's very important for Council to put in place extra supports for community groups at this time. Community social service groups will be relied on even more as family incomes decline and more funding is needed. At the moment, people, in social work, community work groups are starting to think about the Maslow's triangle of need, which is often referred back to at times such as this we are facing now. So the immediate needs, shelter, housing, food, water, warmth, security, are the immediate physiological needs and must be a first focus point. And I know the City Council have supported this in recent times with the COVID-19 pandemic. Health and safety, mental, physical, spiritual and whānau, income support, employment and training needs closely follow as basic needs. We ask Council to include this as a focus and also on our environment, which is so key to all the important needs and building the eco-city we all need in our decision making. I recently heard someone refer to the importance of a 500-year plan or longer. We want to ask you to consider the 500-year plan alongside the 10-year plan, as we need to strive to leave a healthy city, country and planet we can be proud of for the future generations. Wise decision making is key. Seeing the long term as well as the short term is key. So that's just my brief presentation today. I know you've read the written one.
That's great. Thank you, Jean. Appreciate that as always. We have a question, and I'll now pass to Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and kia ora, Jean. Thank you for your submission. I just wanted to get you to expand on the bit where you said that the effect on business is being considered, but not a lot of effect on community is being considered, and that our support is going to be important. Can you go into that a bit more? Like, what in particular in terms of support do you think would be needed? Are you just talking about finances? Are we looking at other things as well? So if you could just expand on that, that would be helpful.
Well, I guess all groups are going to be different, but I know that funding is going to be a challenge. We know the pub charities won't have as much money. There may well be others. Lottery may well decline as well. It's kind of hard to say, but I think it will unfold the issues. Don't feel like I'm an expert on what what will happen, but it is something important to get information about, consider, and maybe have a backup plan, have support available if needed. So yes, I'm not sure I can be more specific than that. I've only started to see the effects.
No, I think that's very helpful. I mean, you've raised a good point. None of us really knows yet, I suppose, how things will unfold, but certainly that funding may be more difficult for community groups to get, and so we'll take note of that. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Jean. There are no further questions. You've been through this process a few times, so obviously your submission will be noted. It goes forward into deliberations at the next council meeting on the 20th. So thank you for participating, and we'll now move. If there's no further questions, councillors, and I don't see any there, we'll now move to our next submitter. So thank you, Jean. Right, councillors, we now move to submitter number 16, and that's Russell Hullum. Welcome, Russell. Are you there?
Am I?
You are. I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi mai kia koutou. Thank you for allowing the submission. I am reasonably new, only 18 months in Palmerston North, but have been active elsewhere. My submission, as you've read, is around the footpaths of our fair city, and no more has it been highlighted than recently, of course, with a seemingly higher traffic of footpath use over the last few weeks, as everyone seems to get out and exercise. My difficulties are in lots of places around our city is where the footpaths aren't that wide, we have to admit, and they probably aren't in the suburbs that well maintained as far as tree roots, etc. And for older people, we are encouraging people to get out and walk. We're encouraging people to get out and use our suburbs as our environment. Having footpaths used as mini cycleways or large cycleways can be quite a danger to a lot of people as they walk along these narrow footpaths. Particularly also, if you get a bike coming up behind you, and it can give you a bit of a start, and also then you may be endeavouring to navigate around some tree roots or whatever. So it's just it's the use of the footpaths. As I've mentioned in my submission, my understanding historically is that footpaths were the use for use of people walking for feet, and the only historical exception was a postie on a push bike, strangely enough. I do understand for perambulators and mobility scooters, maybe we need to make exceptions, but I don't see cyclists who don't need trainer wheels need to use a footpath. We are extending our cycleways, and I think we need to take cognizance of this issue, particularly in rate of the older person.
Great, thank you, Russell, and thank you for submitting. We have a couple of questions, and I'll go to Councillor Bowen first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Russell, for coming in and submitting, and welcome to Palmerston North. I just wanted to ask, are your concerns around the speed of bikes and other, say, scooters on footpaths, the danger there, or about the volume of people on the footpaths if we also allow scooters and bikes on footpaths?
Well, it's really both. However, one leads to the other. If there's a higher volume of people walking, that in effect raises the issues that we're talking about of danger. I have noticed recently during the lockdown that lots more people are cycling in the cycleways and not on the footpath. Families are obviously doing their job there, but I still, it's neither or really, because one leads to the other. It is the volume, and it is of both leading to the dangers that I see.
And if you've seen people using the cycleways more recently, why do you think that is?
I don't know. Maybe it's just because there's been a lot more volume of people out cycling because of the time they have. I really don't know. And I'm only talking about a defined area when I talk about where there are cycleways. The street where I live, and the part of my street is, there are no cycleways. It's a shared road. And can I ask, Mr. Mayor, I had 2 submissions in. Are both of these at the same time, or am I only speaking to one and that's it?
No, they're both at the same time. That's how I see it at this stage.
Because I never could get an answer to that. Now the time has run out, I can't speak at the other one, which is probably more important.
Well, you've got a lot of questions. Okay, well, do you want to briefly talk about your next one?
The other one was around the roading, and in particular the area where I live. I have to define it to that for a time, unfortunately. I live at the between Victoria and Albert, between the Royals and College Street. The street is very narrow. It is a shared road between cycles and vehicles. I understand that it's an arterial route, so therefore it cannot have speed humps or anything, but it is very narrow, and cars and motorbikes do keep right up to at least the speed limit when going down there. If there are buses or trucks passing, they really struggle to get by. Luckily, people take cognizance and don't park on the road, although they could. It has grass berms and trees. People do park on the grass berms because they got nowhere else, which I understand is illegal. And then we have the footpaths. So I don't know. I don't think people would be very, very keen on removing the trees. Maybe the berms could be removed for parking, but also maybe there could be a speed limit. It's a narrow road, and therefore maybe the lowering of the speed limit would help the situation of the high density of traffic travelling through there.
Okay, thank you, Russell. We're slightly ahead of time, so I'll let the questions continue because there are a number. Councillor Dingwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Russell, for your submission. From my understanding, it sounds like you're concerned about safety of pedestrians on the footpaths, and I was just wondering if you would be supportive of having more cycleways to get the cyclists in their space, as opposed to on the footpaths, I suppose. So if you've got a lot more people on the footpaths and a lot more cyclists out, and then as the traffic starts coming back in as we move down the levels, do you think that more cycleways would help alleviate that issue that you're talking about having not enough space for the cyclists on the footpaths?
That's obviously a solution, depending on as you have bylaws, etc., where cycleways can go, I presume. You know, I can't find anywhere in legislation about the use of footpaths. It doesn't. I can't find that. Maybe someone can enlighten me where that says what the use is, the usage, and who it's for, or what it's for. But I think cycles are on the road. If we don't have, then we need to widen the roads. If that is the difficulty there, and maybe the use of cycleways obviously would be of assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Finlay.
Thank you, Russell. I'm just wondering, you know, you're talking about people on footpaths and trouble with cyclists. Have you spoken to many other people that are having the same problem, or is it just in your area?
Within the groups that I've been involved with since my short time here, it is an issue that is talked often, particularly the groups I'm involved with who are of people in the third age. It is a difficulty. Maybe people have raised the issue that it could be, if we have to have cyclists in the vicinity of pedestrians, then maybe it's mandatory for bells or other warning devices to be on bicycles. But yes, I have spoken to quite a few within the different organisations I belong to, and this feeling of not feeling very safe when we're walking out, and as we're encouraged to do, is quite imminent.
Thank you. And in regards to your second submission, have you had any answers from the council whatsoever in regards to your inquiries that you've spoken to staff there?
I've spoken to a councillor and some other people around the issues of speed. I don't like them myself, but I suggested the possibility of speed bumps even, and was told that it's an arterial route. Therefore, you're not allowed to have speed bumps. You're not allowed to have any kinds of barriers to transport going along the road. Buses and trucks don't like speed bumps, apparently. So, as I said, it's also a bus route as well, I'm sorry. Yeah, so it would seem to me that the only thing I could probably push forward as a suggestion is to lower the speed limit.
Thank you, Russell.
Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Russell, for your very timely observations around how transport's working and how it could work better in the city. As luck would have it, I suppose we're in a multi-stage speed limit review, and so just picking up on your request around reviewing the speed limit from Victoria to Albert on College Street, would you be comfortable if that was picked up in one of the next phases of the ongoing speed limit review that we're doing through the city?
Personally, I would, yeah.
Great, thanks. I'm sure officers can take note of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, councillors. That has exhausted the questions. So I thank you very much, Russell, and for taking the time to submit. As I've said to the earlier submitter, that your submissions, both of them, will go forward to council around deliberations. Councillor Barrett's given you a bit of a hint that there are other opportunities too to alleviate some of your concerns. So thank you for doing that, and we will be or officers will be in touch, and you can see or hear those deliberations on the 20th as well. So thank you. We now go to our next submitter, and that's Stuart Herricks. Stuart, I saw you online before. Welcome.
Good morning. Nice to see the few of you that I can see and to know that the rest of you are all out there. With ENM's submission before you, no doubt read, You will note that since Council prepared its response form, we have had the benefit of knowing that the city would be needing to adjust its pathways in terms of recovery. For the environment sector, we see that as an opportunity to demonstrate support for a regenerative economy that will increase the resilience and well-being of our communities, all of them, natural, business and social. To that end, we have prepared a draft post-COVID discussion paper, and some of you have that. We believe we need immediate actions in waste minimisation and biodiversity enhancement. To support those, there are opportunities for co-funding in the Waste Minimisation Fund and Predator-Free 2050 Fund. Much of what is needed is already simmering away in the community. For our sector to gain more energy for the necessary work and amplification of that, we do need a central city environment hub. We are working with Enviro Hubs Aotearoa in that regard. We think the city needs a register of businesses already working in resource recovery and repurposing. Our Food Action Network is working on a register of local growing and distribution initiatives. We also see opportunities citywide for citywide planting and maintenance of planting, weed control, work on waterways and wetlands, and building on the existing predator control and work of recap and issues. But first, we need a plan and an overview, and that preparation of that plan must include the input from community sector groups. And then, secondly, we need excellent communication of that plan out to the community so that the whole city feels that something is happening and get an idea of where they fit into that. We know that a community needs a roof, it needs food, it needs purpose, it needs a means, and it needs time to care for family. Our initiatives address food and purpose, and in some cases even means. We have had resilience and sustainability in our vocabulary and in our reports now for decades. And this is our opportunity to demonstrate and reimagine our city. Where we put our resources now will define us into the future. That was what I'd like to say, and I'd like to hear any questions you might have.
Right, thank you, Stuart. Again, take your submission and a very good lengthy submission is being read. I'll now open it up for questions, and Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Stuart, for your submission. There's a lot of points in there, actually, and I have got a couple of questions. The first one is around when you talk about a citywide plan around food availability in your written submission, were you thinking about coordination of food banks and that type of thing, or were you thinking broader than that?
Yeah, we're thinking circularly, really, all food, because, you know, this being a hub for food, you know, if we concentrate on food, you know, there's all sorts of angles to it. And we recently got some funding for a food coordinator person, and we've been trying to expand that aspect of NM's work. And Helen Vendoff has got that work. And the first thing that we have asked is that you know, we start connecting the dots, and we appreciate there are existing connections between some of the churches and Just Zilch, etc. And you know, there was a church that I'd missed out, but you know, I know that there's the Tongan community and all sorts of little subgroups that you know, we think that they could all be stronger we realise they're very community, very grassroots, but there's something about being part of a collection, as we've worked out over the many years, the benefits from that and the passing on of information, and that's keeping that, smoothing out some of the bumps that those people might have. We've all got solutions to their problems.
Okay, thank you. That's a helpful sort of elaboration on that. My other question was, there was a request in your submission for help from council around coordinating volunteers for pest control. Can you tell me how that's happening at the moment? Is it mostly ad hoc with small neighbourhood groups doing it?
Yes, it seems to be that, yes. But there certainly is, there's great delight in catching pests, and especially for children, and, actually seeing the pest, identifying it, and it builds, and there's so many little subgroups there. But I think it's something that could get a lot more momentum. And we know Adam Jarvis has been doing some fabulous work in that area.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'll pass over to others who've got questions. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Stuart, for your presentation on behalf of Environment Network 102, and the written submission did have a number of salient and accessible points in it. I just wanted to inquire, towards the end of the written submission, you had a comment there around the need for the professional arm of the council, especially at a management level, to have that knowledge and awareness around sustainability and climate change to really deliver on some of the aspirations in the eco-city space. And just wanted, I guess, to understand from Environment Network 102's perspective what that might look like in practice.
Yeah, well, there's a whole lot of great people at the council, and it's just that there are people qualified in this area. Degrees in these things have been available for quite a few years now, in different ways of looking at the issues that all lead up to resilience, and they're out there. I'm saying it's not a qualification that people necessarily within council have that in their headspace. So they don't necessarily think in that way. So it would be great if there was an actual driving force within the council that understood that fully. It's just that coming into conversations on every level.
Right, so I take from that then, in the same way that you'd expect a lawyer to have a law degree, we would expect somebody in the sustainability space to have a professional qualification and experience to deliver that.
Yeah, but still the right sort of person. The person with a sort of vigour that, there's people who have qualifications who just sort of float around with a qualification, but there's those who have the enthusiasm that goes with it.
Good point.
So yes. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I'd like to interview them. No, that's a joke.
Thank you, Stuart. Mr. Mayor.
Back to you, Councillor Johnson.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Mayor, for the additional chance for a question. Sorry, Stuart, there was another question that I had, and that was around the suggestion of a panel of representatives from the wider public to, I guess, advise and consult around issues on climate change. Can you tell me how you would see that working? A bit more detail around that. What's the advantage of that from your perspective?
Oh, that was in the written submission, was it?
Yes. Yeah.
Excuse me.
So on the page 3, it says one option would be to create a panel that would include representatives from across society as well as experts in the field of climate change mitigation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm thinking of sort of more of an understanding of how climate change actually affects our lives and what we can do. And you know how we used to have those discussions in the library sometimes that were quite enlightening. Ways to make climate change not just something that's sort of happening out there, but that can bring people on in. I remember when we were working about GE food and all that sort of thing, We had enormous gatherings in the science sector in large venues around the city, with a great contingent from Massey participating in that. And they were very exciting, alive, argumentative kinds of sessions, but great, really good sessions that we all benefited from. And none of what we're talking about is perfect, but the discussion, getting the discussion going, and getting people to understand it more widely, I think, is quite a mature approach.
Okay, thanks. So you'd see it as an engagement tool primarily?
Yes, really. Yeah. Yes, okay. Whether it's driven by council or by Massey or wherever, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, councillors, and thank you, Stuart, for your submission and the work that your organisation does in our city. I appreciate that. And as the other submitters, we will deliberate on those requests and asks, and that'll be on the 20th. But be assured that it will get a fair hearing. We'll now move to our next submitter, councillors, and that's submitter 38, which is the Palmerston North Community Services Council. And I hope I have Kim Penny and Emma Ushi online. Are you there, Emma or Kim?
Yes, I'm here. Emma Uche. So I'm going to give the submission. Thank you for your time this morning. Kim Penny's with us, and she's going to say hello and introduce herself first.
Yeah, kia ora, ko Kim Penny. I'm the chairperson of the Palmerston North Community Services Council Collective, and really here to back up Emma and probably put my 2 cents worth in as well, but primarily to tautoko Emma.
Great, and Kim's got her PPE there on to provide some context for the current situation. Thank you, Kim. So thank you all for your time today. We're here to submit in support of continuing the funding of $60,000 for the contract for the administration of Hancock Community House. We recognise that we're the Community Services Council, we have an interest in this as we're the service provider. However, the contract benefits all those who visit or work in Hancock House. The contract's been really positive, a really positive development in the history of Hancock Community House. It means there's dedicated resources to support users in the building and to look after the communal spaces. Our community at Hancock House includes tenant organisations working in social services, clients visiting these organisations, and meeting room users. Other visitors pop in for information, and we've got our regular characters who pop in for a chat as well. In ordinary times, Hancock House is a bustling community. Many people are referred to our building by other agencies, and often people can arrive quite vulnerable in a distressed state when they come our way. So they can be disoriented, unsure of even who they've come to see or which service they're looking for. So the contract this funding for the contract allowed the development of a reception service, and this was much needed. There's been a positive reaction from visitors. People get a friendly welcome. It's now obvious where to ask for information and directions. And so this reception role supports the other tenant organisations, informing visitors about the different services and supporting clients as they arrive. For tenant organisations, they now have a central point of contact regarding maintenance issues and health and safety information for the communal spaces. We're also a central point of contact for the City Council. So with this administration contract, there's a clear point of contact for the building, and it supports the City Council staff and their relationships with the tenant organisations. An example of how this was useful prior to the COVID-19 lockdown, this saved time for City Council staff when decisions were made about shutting down the building, and CSC was then able to communicate with and support tenants at this time. So it was calm and orderly, leadership was in place, and the relationships were there because they've been established over the years. To finish, and echoing Jean's comments earlier, actually, I'd like to make a comment about the current situation with these COVID-19 times. We know that demand for social services is going to increase over the next few months or years even, as the impact of COVID-19 and the lockdown period are felt on our society and the economy. The community sector is going to be providing a lot of support to individuals and families. There's going to be increased pressure on services such as counselling, budget advice, housing, providing basic needs as well. But we don't know when this is going to hit. We don't know what is going to be the particular focus of services required, what kind of needs people are going to have. So all we do know is that the community sector is going to continue to need support, and your support as the Palmerston North City Council is going to be vitally important in the times we face ahead. Financial support, obviously, but just the championing of the sector and the community sector and the social service as much as possible. So that's all I have to say. Kim, did you want to add anything at this point?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that you know, the community services, so the City Council has been a long-term supporter of the Community Services Council, and I think this is really where that long-term investment in community services is really, you know, is really showing its worth, because we have a sector that's really well connected. We know each other. We've had the training. We've had all those services that City Council has supported CSC to provide over the years. Is really, this is what you do it for. This is what you're planning for, is this kind of event. So I also just want to kind of acknowledge, you know, not only the people who founded the organisation, but everyone who's held the flame and supported the flame over, what are we up to, 50 years, is it, Emma? Because, you know, sometimes it's hard to justify that kind of input in time, should we say, times of peace. It's in these sorts of situations where we really see a well-connected community sector is so important. So yes, acknowledging the City Council's support over the years for that.
Thank you. And your comments, yeah, I totally agree with your comments there, Kim. I have a couple of questions. I'll go to Councillor Rutherford first and then Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Kim and Emma. Just a question around the reception front of house kind of position that has obviously been established. I was just wondering if you had heard about the, I guess, the effects of that on other tenants, other services in Hancock House, specifically around whether they were in a position to reduce their own kind of reception area. Granted, they don't all have reception areas, but to be able to put time into other areas of their service, whether there'd been any effects that you'd sort of heard anecdotally, or what were they benefiting from?
Yes, well, I think there's definitely potential for the reception service to provide extended services supporting tenant organisations in this way, though I know it's a bit of a sensitive topic, particularly if we're talking about employment relationships that other tenant organisations have with their staff and how things may change in the future. I think there are organisations who can see the potential of the reception area, the receptionists at Hancock House taking on some more responsibilities to support their organisations. And I will say, aside from that shared service aspect of this contract, there's potential for other shared services. All the tenants are interested in looking at the telecommunications, for example, as a practical thing that we could potentially have a shared contract for the building and save some time and resources. And so we're going to be looking into that as an example of shared services as well.
And is that conversation come out of this new service?
Yes, it has, because there has been an emphasis from the community development team that we really use this as the leaders in the building at Hancock House to push some conversations about shared services. So yeah, that definitely wouldn't have happened without that contract, because there was no clear leadership structure or anyone responsible for making those conversations happen. So yeah, there's definitely potential. I think obviously to start off with, we've had to develop the relationships and the processes and have the good communication between everyone, so that's an ongoing thing, and as time develops, people will see the benefits of working, sharing their services and different things they do together more closely.
Cool. That's really positive. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Emma and Kim, and thanks particularly for the work that you've been doing over the last few weeks. I know you've both been very, very busy. I just wondered if, because I take that the submission was probably written before all of the pandemic issues struck us. I just wondered if there was anything coming out of the way that people have worked together, either across organisations or with council during this time, a level of collaboration that you think we could take forward, or are you seeing that we would go back exactly to how things were happening before? So I'm just interested in your perspective on that.
Do you mean more widely than the Hancock House scenario, or?
Yes, in terms of, you know, there's been quite, obviously with the state of emergency, there's been coordination of welfare services through council, and that has brought a lot of groups together. And I just wondered, I'd be interested in your perspectives, both you and Kim, on how you think, if there's any element of this that could be carried forward, I guess.
Thank you on it. Kim, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I guess it's still a work in action, so I guess I'll be a little bit careful about my words, but I think a little bit frustration in the community sector in that we are professionals who work on a daily basis with people in need in the community, and we're a little bit at arm's length from our clients because the calls are going through to City Council staff members who are very well intended, but they're not professionals in this sector. So I just think going forward we need to have a little bit of a consideration about look, but again, this will all be reviewed, and every incident is a different incident, and so you can't necessarily write a bunch of rules that will be applicable in every situation. Yeah.
I think social services are really keen to get back and see their clients face to face as soon as possible, because it's the in-person contact where you be able to read someone's body language and really support them in the social service. Social is all about people after all. So yes, we know that's outside the City Council's control. The government's going to send us guidelines about when all that can happen, but there's definitely things we can learn from this period when collaboration's really been at the fore. Fast decisions have been made, especially in the early days with the City Council staff, the Emergency Operations Centre, community sector groups. People came together and made really quick decisions about providing basic needs, welfare, housing. Government agencies were involved too, and if we could keep those, the kind of urgency about the provision of welfare and provision of basic needs at the forefront of our minds, so we don't go back to homeless people on the streets in Palmerston North, for example. Why do we allow that to happen? What could we do to collaborate to make that a thing of the past and put that in the past behind us? Yeah, I think there's potential to take lessons and learn from the processes and systems which were quickly established and decisions that were quickly made as we went into the lockdown time.
Thank you. Thank you both for your contributions. That's very helpful.
Yeah, perhaps just say likewise, there's been that level of discussion between central, local government and social service agencies, and that's something that, yeah, as Emma's sort of saying, well, why haven't we been doing that up until now? Why did it take a crisis to get that high level, that level of conversation? But there, and again, you know, the reality is we can't get back to how things were. The world has changed. So as we go forward to the new normal, that might be one of the positive things to take forward.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Beth.
We're ahead of time, people, so I'll allow one more question. Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, and thank you both. Emma, just to clarify in your written submission with the $5,000 that's required an operational program for furniture, is that additional money to your service fee that you're looking for, or is it something that's already budgeted for?
I believe it's already budgeted for, and actually since I wrote the submission I forgot to go back and look and get clarification from council officers about where to find that. So the previous year that we've just had was the first full year of the Hancock House $60,000 contract, and we also had another $5,000 for furniture and equipment for the communal spaces of Hancock House, and that was separate. And I believe at a council meeting in December 2018, that was separate budget line. I don't know the correct terminology, I'm afraid, about it.
Yeah, no, you've answered that.
I presume that that amount continues. I think that's what I wrote in the submission, that I couldn't see it in the consultation documents for the annual plan, but I presumed it just continued as part of ordinary operational budget.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow that up.
Thank you.
Great. Look, thank you, Emma, and thank you, Kim. You're as all the other submitters, it goes forward into deliberations. But again, we appreciate all the work you're doing in challenging times, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Great, thank you. Councillors, we're ahead of time, so we're going to submission number 39. It's for St. John's. And even though it came from somebody different, Helen Snedden, we have Noel Beavers and Steve Yanko online. And welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed for thank you very much indeed for your opportunity to address you and support our submission. We really appreciate that. I'm the chairman of the local St John Palmerston North Area Committee, and we're responsible for fundraising for St John in the area and support our public services in the community. We're currently working on a project to build a new ambulance station in Willis Street, and we're going to people for support to build that. We get no government funding whatsoever for our infrastructure, and we're required to find the finance to build a station. The cost of that station that we've got as a fundraising target is $650,000, of which we've got, well, we did have just on half, but we've had to break into that because of the COVID situation. So we currently have $303,325. So we need to try and boost that, because the fundraisers actually require us to have over 50% of our funding before they're really keen to help us. Steve can probably tell you about the advantages of building a station in Willis Street, and I'll hand it over to him.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. Everyone can hear me all right, can't you?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as Noel said, we're infrastructure and buildings are not something that the government fund us for. However, we are left out of our operational grants and government money to try and prop up, buy vehicles and fleet, and includes building. What we want to do here in Palmerston North is put a spoke station in. We've got our main Palmerston North station down on Tremaine Ave, which serves us really well, is well located. But to meet our contractual targets with government, Palmerston North is a growing and spreading city. We have to meet targets down to this end of town. So we've got a site already, a St John site, which is owned by the area committee, and we dispatch an ambulance there during the day. We can't operate it 24/7 because it hasn't got suitable facilities. But the whole idea is to put us in another site there, which we will deploy vehicles to, so that we can meet our increasing demand and our targets around Palmerston North. And one example of that is we do have a 6-minute target to meet cardiac arrest, extreme emergencies. So you can imagine by the time a crew gets a call, even down the other end of Tremaine Ave, and it's up this end of town, or up around Owapuni, by the time crews are paged, we cannot meet our targets. So that's part of the reason we've strategically been looking at another site, and the Willis Street site is perfect to meet that demand.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Noel. Look, we've got some questions. I'll start with the first one. Do other territorial authorities, do other cities dip in to fund St John's for buildings?
It's a really good question, and we're starting to get an interest in councils wanting to assist, particularly in rural areas. We're looking at a build up around Taihape at the moment, and yeah, that we've been approached by council. I've also got a station I'm building in Hunterville, where the council gifted us some land. So that's really encouraging. It's quite incredible to see. So many councils are saying, look, we're more than rates and rubbish. We want to connect, we want to reach into our communities and assist in this way. So we don't take it for granted, and yeah, it is something special, really.
And at a national level, do you have a fundraising arm?
Yes, we do. We have a significant fundraising arm, and as Noel explained, they do put pressures on the area committees. You know, Noel and his team have got quite the community people. You know, Noel comes to me and says, what do you need? And they're the front line. You know, they're trying to raise certain funds, but the national team support with grants, significant grants, and do give good advice on fundraising. So we've moved that into more of a national model, so that Noel and his team and myself have got support around that. Yep.
Okay, got a number of questions. Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Noel and Steve, for your representation on this submission, and obviously for what St. John's does in our community. My questions were somewhat in the same vein that the mayor was asking, but I guess I'd come to a bit more specificity then. So your ask of around 200,000 against a 600 plus build cost, is that sort of the model that you're seeing emerging in other cases where local authorities are getting involved, that it sort of sits around that 1/3 mark, or is there some variation around that?
I can answer that. Yeah, the advice we're getting from our national fundraising group is that the funding, various public funding groups want to see us with about 2/3 of the money before they will consider topping that up. So we've got to get to 2/3 of that money, and then we can apply and get some consideration. We've tried in the last 12 months to breach that gap, but they just won't be involved until
I think it'd be fair to say, you know, there's not a magic formula, and council, it does vary, as you guys will appreciate, council to council. And I can only think of examples like Hunterville, where they've gifted some land. Some councils, I'm working with Taurarua's at the moment on possibility of helping us over there with a Paetua station, and we're looking at emergency management. One thing we've learned out of COVID and lots of other disasters that have occurred is we can work better at community level. So we're going to have an IL4 building over in Paetua, and we want to work with council. I've met with them already on how we could possibly open that up so that that's there for the community to use as well, for council to use should they need to go to Paetua. So there's not a magic formula around this. I think councils are starting to reach out in various ways.
Thank you for that. Also wanted to understand just around timing then. You said that your financial position had been eroded somewhat by COVID-19 already around this project. Council, you know, has some pressure on it as well. What's the need in terms of timing this year versus, say, a future year?
Probably Noel could probably answer that in terms of the area committee, and I'll answer the COVID and what the impact it's had on St John in general. I'll answer. So you go first, Noel.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, we would like to get this project up and running as soon as possible, and we'd hope to if we're lucky enough to get a grant from you people, we would hopefully like to start breaking dirt by the end of the year or the beginning of next year. There is some urgency from our point of view to get the station built.
Thank you.
Where COVID's taken the area committees, Noel refers to some of, his budget being impacted, and some of that might be through local support through the charity arm of St John. I report nationally, and our CEO, we'll be looking closely at the budget announcement this week. We're running nationally a $15.6 million deficit, really, really significant. So nationally, we're working with the Crown on better funding for ambulance services in general. And what we want to include in that, and our CEO's been upfront about it, we've collaborated with Wellington Free in this regard because we're both charities running an essential service, is that we can include in that infrastructure and building. We feel that the government should dip into their pockets to help pay for infrastructure where we've got essential services. The demand, for example, to have IL4 buildings, same as police and fire, is significant and a lot of money. So if we look at this building that Noel and them are trying to fundraise for, all those things bring added cost. So it's a bit of a national issue, and yes, Palmerston North is an example. It's a cog in the wheel where we have to reach out and get community support where we can to help. But we are working with central government on this issue as well. Yep.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Beattie.
Mute.
Can't hear you, Councillor.
Sorry, somebody put me back on mute. Yeah, thank you both. Most of my questions been answered by already, but just would you consider another option of a different site if council had land elsewhere?
We'd be open to that, providing from our service delivery model and our KPIs and our requirements that we selected this part of town from all the data we've collected, and we've got some clever software that can predict work and etc. based on our population. We have got a hot spot over, and I say here because I live in Pascal Street, so forgive me, but over this part of town, we've got we refer to what we call a heat map. So we know there's a whole lot of work gets done over here, yet our station, where a whole lot of work gets done down in Tremaine or by the hospital. So we're looking even across to Massey as that develops. Could we need a bigger site? And this is happening with main centres all around New Zealand. It's getting away from having one big station to lots of hubs or spokes. So to answer your question, we'd be open to other options, providing they would meet our service delivery needs and contractual. The government do put, even though they only partially fund us, they do put contractual requirements around that funding. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors, we're ahead of time, so I'll allow one more question. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Noel and Steve. My question really is just a very quick one. What work has actually been done around potential co-location with other emergency services to resolve your issues in terms of being able to meet your timing requirements for response? Thank you.
Yeah, really good question, and that is something that's been looked at up and down the country. We have pockets, like I gave the example of Taihape. Fire want to look at a building there, we want to look at a building. It's suggested, why don't we get together? Our property people are working collaboratively with fire and police in this regard. We've had police approach us for Hunterville. These are examples of where we are reaching out and we get a variant in terms of replies from both those agencies. We're open to that. We're still extremely open to that, and I think it's something that's become more of an issue now, and become New Zealand's too small for us to be working in silos, doing our own thing, and we're very open to that. For Palmerston North specifically, we haven't had any formal approaches, or we haven't approached fire. We did talk to fire because the Mitch around the corner with Central Fire, very close to the site we're developing, but of course with USAR demands, etc., on their land, that's not an option for us. But yeah, we're still open, and I think we need to get better at doing that going forward.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Great. Look, thank you, gentlemen. That's exhausted the questions. Again, thank you, Steve. I've been on many calls with you recently with the Emergency Management Centre. So just want to acknowledge the work that St John's have done, obviously in this difficult time, but also all the work you do just every day. So we appreciate that. Your submission will go forward to May the 20th. We will deliberate, and you're quite welcome to sit on that, and we just it'll either be electronic or in person in the chamber. So thank you, councillors. We're slightly ahead of time.
Thank you.
We now move to the next submitter, which is number 44, which is the Manawatu River Source to Sea. And I understand we have Alistair Cole online. I saw you before, Alistair. Welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for inviting Manawatu River Source to Sea to make a submission to council. And really great that you guys are able to host these digitally, and to kind of enable us to all say our 2 cents to you guys. So really appreciate that. So for any of you who don't know, and I'm sure that we'll keep reiterating this, Manawatu River Source to Sea is a branch of the Environment Network Manawatu, focusing on its biodiversity cluster, a group of 20 of us who have biodiversity matters at heart of our business, who are wanting to work together in partnership to achieve some great things across the Manawatu River catchment in its totality, which includes Palmerston North City. So just really quickly, so you've taken our submission, that's great. I guess some key elements from that submission that I'd really like to talk to, particularly around the region's post-COVID-19 economic rebuild. Certainly in our submission, it is highlighted that there is opportunities here for co-funding and opportunities in this kind of space. There's been a lot of talk nationally at the moment about the green economy and how that might come into the equation in post-COVID-19. Certainly, we know that the big council submission that went to government included a lot of environmental in that, and we have also, as Source to Sea and as Environment Network, and actually as individual members of that, been talking with MPI, Ministry for Primary Industries, with MFE, Ministry for the Environment, and we've also been talking to Department of Conservation about the work programs that we could be delivering in a post-COVID-19 area. And so in that space where these guys are also looking, as they always do, at co-funding and what opportunities are there. So I think that there's a real opportunity here with council organisations. So we are also submitting to Horizons on this matter as well as other territorial authorities, for us to make a pitch to these guys. And if we have a little bit of skin in the game and a little bit of money in our belt to be able to do that, we are going to be much more likely to be successful in bringing some money into the region to deliver in that space, which can only be good. One of our particular projects in that space that we are going to be pitching is around the unallocated Crown land that still exists within our river corridors around the region, particularly looking there at planting and enhancement of that unallocated Crown land, but also looking at weed and pest control there, given that particularly weed control is a real white elephant for any planting regimes that we are delivering. And I guess the other thing I'd like to emphasise as well is that we know that 10-year plans are coming up next year. This is a great opportunity too as well. We would love to hop around with council around a table and talk about where things go from here, because this isn't all going to land tomorrow, even though we know that a lot of these government departments are chomping at the bit to get things rolling. I think that there's a great conversation to be had with your council, and I invite questions.
Thank you, Alistair. Look, I'll start with one, and I do appreciate this is a great joined-up approach, and you talk about co-funding, and of course, I think that's the way we can get these opportunities underway. You spoke about in your submission around predator-free 2050, and obviously the Waste Minimisation Fund. Have you been talking to other TAs? I mean, you spoke about Horizons, which is our regional council, but Manawatu and Tararua obviously have a part to play here, and if you go further downstream, Horowhenua. So do you talk to them as well?
We do, and we have made submissions to them in the past, and we intend to make submissions to all of them. And we have relationships with all of those councils in some way, shape or form. And I think big take my hat off to you guys. You're really leading the pack with helping us with providing us with that initial funding to get us going. So you guys are providing some great leadership there as a council in that space. We are, and as a result of that, we are having much more fruitful conversations with the other territorial authorities as well in this space. But having said that, this often takes time too as well, and I think that the more that we can show that we're achieving the work program and achieving some great stuff, and I guess the benefit of you guys being the first people who've invested in us is that we will endeavour as much as possible to focus on where things can benefit the city as a starting point. And hopefully they'll see that and they'll say, come to our council too.
Yeah, we've got an advocacy role now for central government, and that staff member is ex-ministry down there and probably has a better understanding of navigating those government pots of money. And I note the Waste Minimisation Fund, which I don't think we do enough. I think we actually could do more. And then partnering with you around the predator free, because they'll want to look for a local, what is the local solution? And it's actually the volunteers and groups like yourselves. So, no, I think that we can do stuff together there. I'll now go, Councillor Naylor, I think I may have stolen your thunder, sorry there. I'll go to Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Alistair, for this representation to us today. Just wanted to pick up on your point around getting alongside Council's professional arm for the development of the long-term plan. I think there might be, it's an interesting prospect, and just wondered, you sort of pitched it up as an organization to organization link, but could that be more of a sector to council link? Could it be something that's sort of focused around environmental well-being, that there's a forum there, and then maybe an economic one, etc.? How would you see that playing out best from your organization's point of view?
Absolutely, completely agree with that. And I guess from our point of view, the whole idea of something like an environment network is to bring all parties together at the table and to provide a conduit for you guys to get access to those kind of people, and for us to advocate for all groups to be part of that conversation. So I think that coming through us and using us as a conduit to get a lot of member groups around the table and all of those organisations who would like to be involved is a great way forward. So I think that, yeah, definitely come and talk to us. We're really keen.
Cool, thanks for that comment. Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Alistair. That's exhausted the questions, but I just would like to acknowledge the work you do personally, and also the Manawatu River Source to Sea on the River Accord. I often hear of your work, and look, everything that's getting joined up, I think we can only get better. So really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Completely agree. Thank you all for your time. Really great. All
right, councillors, we're still ahead of time. I wish normal council meetings went like this. But anyway, we're up to submitter number 49, which is the Manawatu Chamber of Commerce. So I hope we have Amanda Lindsley online. Amanda.
Yes, you do. Good morning, everyone. So thank you for hearing our submission here today. My name is Amanda Lindsley and I'm the CEO for the Manawatu Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is an independent membership organisation consisting of over 400 businesses from large organisations through to government departments, SMEs and the not-for-profit sector. Collectively, we represent a large portion of the city and region's employers and GDP. Whilst we fully recognise the impact of COVID-19, you'll be aware from our submission, we do not agree to a rate increase freeze. Freezing rates at a time when we'll be fighting to get out of economic downturn and with high unemployment already forecast has the potential to cripple the opportunity for economic recovery, not help those most in need and result in higher rates increases in the future. Underinvestment in infrastructure and other capital projects could ultimately lead to more hardship and further job losses, while storing up the increase for future years and impacting our communities for generations to come. Whilst rates relief does support jobs, it is proven that investment at the same rate increases jobs at a far higher proportion, as it helps to stimulate the economy. So now is not the time for austerity, now is the time to invest and fire up our economy, as has been proven through previous recessionary times. What is needed is focused spending, and we ask Council to sharpen its pencil, reprioritise spending, and to minimise a rate increase as far as practical. It remains very important that PNCC, just like any other organisation, is sufficiently funded to deliver its services. Council should continue to seek further funding from central government and encourage private partnerships where possible. We're delighted to see the Central Trust Arena upgrades commence and that the contract is with a local business, which not only supports the business, but has a knock-on effect to other businesses, which again supports jobs and helps to rebuild our local economy. Now is the time to support businesses that are emerging through the crisis, those who are diversifying and those who are encouraging sustainability through projects such as waste minimisation and or are strengthening and supporting our community's welfare that we heard already from Stuart Harrison and the Environment Network Manawatu, and Chamber is just starting to work with them and look at what a registered businesses in that space with recycling and upcycling, those sort of things could look like. And also I'm talking about the sort of businesses that are there to help support our communities, or that funding might be needed, extra funding for the Women's Health Collective. We've heard from just about everybody that spoke already today. So now is not the time to make cutbacks, which could lead to further recessionary behaviour and outcomes. That all said, we fully understand that many businesses and individuals are and will suffer severe hardship. And in the case of some businesses, they won't survive. We do not underestimate the situation. We, along with other organisations, are on the coalface supporting these businesses. We're therefore asking Council to look at targeted rates relief or rates deferral for those businesses and individuals who most need it, rather than a carte blanche approach. Importantly, in the case of businesses, any rates relief or deferral would need to benefit the business and not just the landowner. In summary, Manawatu Chamber of Commerce urge PNCC to review their proposed rates increase of 4.4 for the annual budget, but not to freeze rates, in order to maintain investment which supports jobs and will result in sustainable longer-term economic recovery. We request that PNC consider rates payments deferral or other for specific hardship cases. Manawatu Chamber of Commerce thank PNCC for your leadership through these difficult times, the teams within the Emergency Operations Centre, and for those working collaboratively on the city's recovery plan. Thank you again for hearing us today.
Thank you, Amanda. And we've got some questions coming, but I'll start. So I'll cover off people's ability to pay, and I think you probably have answered this, but I'll go through with the question anyway. So you're encouraging us to keep investing in ourselves in terms of the city, for stimulating jobs and people's livelihoods and employment. But also you're saying if there are people struggling to pay, that you're encouraging us to have a setup or a way of people being able to defer or put payment plans in place. Is that correct?
Absolutely, we want those people that are, are suffering those hardships not to, we don't want to impact any of those situations. But we do think that the carte blanche approach to just doing a rates freeze when there are organisations or that can and will still pay would be the wrong thing to do at this moment in time.
Good. And you have your ear to the ground, and thank you for everything you've been doing in terms of communicating to all your businesses around the city and region. And obviously some of our sectors are more affected than others. But in some of our, I'd say, bigger employment sectors, are you hearing of massive job layoffs?
Not so much at the moment, other than the obvious ones that we all know about, sort of more on a wider scale, which are in the hospitality sector, but not so much at the moment. But I think maybe it's early days in some respects, and that those knock-on effects we're not going to see till later on in the year, or at least not until June time. But we are hearing of some redundancies, yes, and inevitably that is going to increase as time goes through.
Okay. Councillor Naylor.
Thanks, Amanda, for your submission. You've presented us with really what is going to be the big challenge of our discussions next week in terms of how we set the rates. You've advocated that you don't think we should freeze the rates, but you've also appealed to us to minimise the rates increase where possible. I'm just wondering if you have a view about, where that right balance might be in terms of how far we pull things back in the plan that we've got to achieve a lower rates increase, about where you think that it would be appropriate or acceptable.
I think that's really a question for council, because you've got all the figures right across the board. But so I guess what we're just saying is, go back, have a look at things. What can you realistically cut? What isn't going to stop, or potentially has less impact to stop that regeneration that we now need. So we're being sort of quite pragmatic about this. So we haven't got all the answers about where you should go and do that, because you know that far better than us. But it's just saying, go back to the table, have a look. And I know that that's on your, is in your plans anyway. So we're supporting that. But we're saying don't just freeze it. We want you to look at what you could potentially cut, but what you could still keep investing, so that we are putting money back in. Hopefully we can still keep those the jobs growing.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate your comments, Amanda. Thank you.
Thanks, Baron.
Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Amanda, for your presentation this morning. Just wanted to follow up on your point around the rates, any rates deferral type options that might be developed, and your emphasis on passing that through, or ensuring that some of that at least is passed through to the tenants in the case of businesses, as I understand it. Just wondered if you would see that as being a consistent principle that we'd also want to pass through in terms of residential tenants.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll just add, the differentiation I was making there was that obviously it's the landowners that are actually are paying the rate, and we want to make sure that the businesses get it. And you're saying, like, for people that are tenants of in rental properties.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Dingwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Amanda, for your submission and comments today. We know that a lot of businesses will be affected by this. Would you support extra funding or extra support going towards the community sector to help, I guess, hold those people and help them not to fall too deep into, I guess, poverty and that kind of thing? Would you support funds being allocated in that way?
Yeah, I mean, by project. But for example, like I was saying earlier with the Environment Network Manawatu, if we can actually help to support some of those initiatives that they've got coming up, and it's like the old analogy, isn't it? If you give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. If you teach him how to fish, you'll feed him for a lifetime. So if we're actually putting money into projects that can actually be ongoing and developing skills and talents, supporting those type of initiatives, then I know people also talked about the waste minimisation fund, which is available as well. It's sort of let's put some things in. But again, the first round of submissions I think closes on the 22nd of May. So we're pretty tight on that time frame. But yeah, definitely looking at projects that have got long-term benefit help the environment, that have that sustainability element to it as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Harpiter.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Amanda. Just to clarify a point, tenants do pay rates in terms of paying it through their OPEX.
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah. But what I was saying was that through the OPEX for the commercial tenants, we want to make sure that it is that if there's a cut, if there's any deferral, that it is passed through at that space. I mean, it's obviously with commercial tenants, it's sometimes quite easier to see where that element of the rates is being passed through. It's less obvious or easy to see with the residential tenants. But what we're saying is that if it's being taken at the top level by the land owners, the house owners, we want that to be. I would expect that to be filtered through.
I agree with you entirely, and I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. But would be really hard for us to manage that in terms of whether the landlord had passed that on. So I just think that would be quite a hard process for us.
Very hard to.
Yeah, but I do think a lot of things that you have said make a lot of common sense, and I do agree with your sentiment. The other thing I just wanted to ask, though, Amanda, was have you canvassed your businesses to see if they agree with what the chamber is actually advocating?
Yeah. We've on numerous different ways through our board, which is a strong board, and also through our advisory board, which is very representative of the city. But also during the COVID-19 time, we've probably had more engagement than ever with our businesses. But also we've made a conscious effort to actually pick up the phone and talk to we're just who are heading the list and going through, so we can talk to as many people as possible.
Great.
A, to give them that support, but B, to make sure we're getting the feedback as well. But we're definitely getting feedback because it's a very vocal time.
Yeah, just to reiterate what the Mayor has said, you're doing a great job from the Chamber's point of view, from an advocacy point of view. So thanks very much for what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
All right, that's exhausted the questions, Amanda, and like Councillor Harpiter, again, thank you for communicating. I think there is no greater time to be in touch with your membership, to be talking to everybody, and just listening to people's understanding what they're coming from, whether it's good, bad, challenging opportunities, whatever it may be.
And just a plug for the Choose My Number 2 campaign.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on
that. So that launched on Thursday, and this morning we'd had 151 businesses register, and that means that they've uploaded everything into the directory and they're up and running. It's a great collaboration between, as you know, between the different stakeholders around the city, the CEDA and FDP, MDC, PNCC, and PUMI-BID, and all the other acronyms that we can think of.
Yeah, and I just think there's probably a second stage of the populating or the campaign, the getting the media involved, whether it be radio, print, online. It's been done well. Now's the chance to tell our public about it well and truly.
So we've loaded that, the business side of it we've got there, and now it will be going out to the consumers as well, which is what is the message that we specifically want to give. Thank you for the support on that as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Amanda. And councillors, we have now come to the end of our 7 submitters. We're slightly early. We don't have any more questions or comments, so I'll now look to adjourn this meeting to 3:30 p.m. and I think something will come up. Thank you. That all material will be referred to the Committee of Council meeting on the 20th of May 2020 for consideration in the first instance, and that this meeting be adjourned and resume again at 3:30 p.m. I'll move that, and I'll ask that the Deputy Mayor seconds it.
Yep. Happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And we'll do it with a very quick, all those in favour? All those in favour? Aye. Aye. Against? It's carried. Thank you. All right, councillors, I'll see you again online. Someone might see you a little bit earlier, but we'll see you online at 3:30. Kia ora.
Yes.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
Thanks, Grant.